Welcome back to Man vs. Meeple, the show where we talk about all things board game related. Today we're bringing you a Kickstarter preview of an upcoming game called Hand of Fate Ordeals. This one is by Rule and Make and is from a popular video game from the same title, Hand of Fate.
Exactly. Hand of Fate, the video games, I think it's just about on all the consoles at least. And it started as kind of incorporating some card play in the mechanics of fighting.
Yes.
So it's kind of interesting that way. It didn't start as a board game or a card game, and now it's coming to the table.
And it felt very much like a board game when you were playing a video game as well.
You're playing cards out of a hand to fight and things like that. And then this is a deck builder. It sort of brings over that same theme with a touch of adventure and exploration for a deck builder.
Yeah, so this game plays 2 to 4 players. It takes about 90 minutes to get through. The whole idea within the game, you are trying to defeat the 3 different bosses. You have a jack, a queen, and a king. There are 4 of each of those, but you only have to fight 1, so you have some variety within the game. Each of these have a number of hit points, a number of minions they'll bring in, plus a special ability that they provide that you'll have to fight against when you defeat them. At the start of the game, the jack is hidden in one of the locations, and he will be revealed through an ambush. You'll have to fight him. But once he's defeated, the queen and the king, when they're revealed, will be at the start of each round, so they'll have a kind of a global effect throughout the course of the game. Let's talk about all these components, because there's a lot of stuff going on, then we'll talk about the basic gameplay, which is pretty simple.
There are a lot of components in this game, and they are beautiful. We should say, again, this is a prototype as usual, but this prototype is one of the nicer ones we've seen, for sure.
It's been manufactured.
Yeah.
So, and when you look at the cards too, guys, make sure that you recognize that a lot of the text may change through the course of development. They're still working on that. And a lot of the art's been repeated in here, so when you see a card that may look the same as another card, that's all being changed as well. All right. There's a lot of cards in here.
Yeah, let's start at the top.
Yeah, so I'll start over here. These are Poor Fortune cards. These are always available. They're curses. They will be given to players. They just clog up people's decks. They're usually given by injuries through the course of the game.
Yeah, when you take an injury, you're going to take either a fortune card or the next card, which is the pain card.
Yeah.
So when you take an injury, you're not just taking a hit point off. You're going to flip over one of those cards, and it might actually say, take a Poor Fortune card, or take 3 hit points off.
Yeah.
A variety of different things that you have to deal with. So that's sort of the bad part of the board here when you're fighting. And then as we move over, like Jeremy said, we have the jack, the queen, and the king. We cover those pretty much. There's a nice little variety here, like Jeremy said. When you reveal these things, they're going to have an ongoing impact on the game.
Yeah, one of the things to note, too, the jack and the queen are both stationary mobs. If you do not defeat them, they stay in that location until they are defeated by another opponent at the table. The king will actually move through the course of the board. He's kind of unique when he comes into the game. If you don't defeat him, he'll move around and attack people through the course of the game.
It's very cool. It's yet another one of those aspects that makes it feel like you're not just playing a standard deck builder, but you're actually in a world and exploring it.
Yeah.
Over here, the minion cards. Why don't you take the minion cards?
Yeah, the minion cards, there's a variety of them. They all come in different suits. A lot of the suits will play onto the locations that you have. These have a number of hit points and abilities that you'll have to fight through in order to kill them. Plus, some of them will drop these little shards. These shards will be able to use once you defeat the boss. The boss will summon a demon trader, which you'll be able to go to. This is a really cool aspect. We'll talk about that right now because this is really neat. When the players defeat the boss, didn't matter who defeats it, if they have 5 of these relic shards, they're allowed to summon the demon trader. And then each player at the table is allowed to contribute 3 to be able to draw relic cards and be able to get one of those relic cards, regardless of whoever defeats them. And those relic cards are like legendary items that are soul-bound to you, so even if you die, they don't go away.
They're just like any sort of RPG or MMO. They're really cool soul-bound items. And it's really cool because even if you're not the one that defeated the boss, if you've collected some of those relic shards, you're able to contribute, like Jeremy said, so everyone gets to take a look. It's just that the person who beat it gets first dibs on that out of all the cards that get drawn into the pool.
You have a location deck. There's 3 different types of locations. There's level 1s, level 2s, level 3s, and they're all correlated to the jack, the queen, and the king. They'll be placed onto the board after the actual whole entire location will be wiped after the jack is defeated. New locations will come in, and the same thing with the king. At the start of the game and in each of the levels, you'll have 7 random locations, and you'll have 1 hidden location there. All these face down. The hidden location that's predetermined is the queen spot or the king spot, or even the jack spot in this case.
Yeah, and then one other spot here, which is not a card, which is actually the starting position. It's the town.
Yeah.
And so every character is going to start there. This is where, this section of the board is where you're going to be sort of doing the adventuring. You're going to be moving around this board. You actually have to fuel that movement with another resource, which is food, in order to move around. I think you can also use your health, right?
Yep.
So you can kind of push your luck with your resources to get around the board, find some new locations, because some of these locations have fights.
Yeah.
But some of these locations are just like a unique marketplace.
Yeah, let's talk about the locations. There's 3 different types of locations. You have event locations, you have combat locations, and then you have ambushes. Let's talk about the events first. Those are just locations you can go to and do something within the card itself, such as trade in a certain resource to be able to do something or buy something cheaper from the market. Any of these locations will have dots on the bottom of them, which you will place these stones or crystals.
Little crystals.
That means how many times a player can use those before that location is pretty much dead
all
from
the
using
players.
the ability.
Yeah, so each location has the number of crystals, and once those crystals are gone, you really can't go back there and use the location, which is kind of cool.
And then you have combat locations. Those locations, again, you don't have to, when you go to a location, you don't have to enact the event from going there. But if you choose to do the combat there, it'll tell you to draw X number of minions and fight them at whatever they may do, like add plus strength if you're fighting against plague enemies and whatnot.
Now, unless it's an ambush, right?
Ambush is the only other one. The only ambush in level 1 is Jack. You have to fight him immediately. But as level 2 and level 3 encounters come into play, there are more ambushes in there. Yeah. Also, if you'll notice on all these location cards, they have banners on the left-hand side. These refer to the market cards that you can buy when you're at these locations. This is really unique to a deck building game. There's a display of different market cards, 6 in every single game, that you'll be able to buy from. But only at specific locations can you buy specific cards. The exception to that is no matter what location you are at the game, in the game, you can always buy equipment.
Right.
That's always possible for the players. Now, the 3 different types of market cards that you can buy, you have, the first one is the red cards.
Right.
Or warrior cards. Those will actually be attached to your weapon and give you abilities. The blue cards are your trickster cards. These are cards that do a variety of different things, and they also typically key off weapon abilities and whatnot.
Yeah, and kind of combo off each other.
And the last one, besides the equipment cards, are your adventure cards. These are your green ones that typically give you more food or more points to buy stuff, and then also have a special ability. Cool thing about this is that almost every single card in the game has a special ability, and they're all unique.
Yeah, you really have to look through these cards. This is not one of those deck builders where you can look up at the display and think, okay, there's 3 of these kind and 2 of these kind. I mean, they are categorized, but you really do need to look at these because they have a lot of flavor and a lot of differences in between them.
We'll come back to the equipment when I start talking about the player board. Let's continue moving down the board. You have the display of 6 market cards.
Yep.
When any one of those are bought, it's immediately replaced, so a player can buy as much as they want on their turn. We'll get into the turn structure in a moment. You also have the market stack, which is gigantic.
Yeah.
You have flourish cards. Those
That's
are
the standard card that you can buy to sort of beef up your purchasing power.
Yep. And then you have the relic cards down there, which are special soulbound cards. All the market cards have a value in the bottom left-hand corner. That's how much it costs to buy those particular cards. Each player will have a player board. All these player boards are the exact same, although they do have a unique figure in the corner. They have a health track on the top. When you get to 0 health, you'll die, and a lot of things will happen. We'll go through those in a moment. You'll have a rusty axe.
Yeah.
Every player will have a rusty axe. This provides no strength in combat, but does allow you to draw 2 cards whenever you get into combat. We'll talk about combat in a second. Also, you have a place for an offhand weapon. You have some equipment, and then you have a piece of armor.
Yeah.
Anytime that you should get a piece of equipment that is already in spot, like say, for instance, I have a weapon here and I get a better weapon, you can actually stash this by throwing it into the discard pile and immediately getting the victory points that the previous weapon was worth.
Yeah, so basically it ensures that any cards that you've acquired that have victory points at the bottom, you're going to get whether you replace them or not.
Yep. So the equipment cards, there's all kinds of different ones in here. You have shields and weapons and helmets and armor and rings, all kinds of different things that affect combat basically through the course of the game.
And the combat is very unique.
Yeah, let's actually go through a turn structure to tell you what you do on your turn. So at the start of the game, each player is going to be given 10 cards. Within those 10 cards, you have 7 strides. Those are basically your money. Each one of them is worth $1. You have 2 of your forage cards, which allow you to get the food. Food is a resource that will allow you to move. Each one food has to be expended for each movement that you make upon the board. movement is orthogonal in this game. And then you have one hack card. Hack cards are your attack cards.
Yeah, the hack card is one of those types of cards that you can add to your weapon.
Yep.
Those are denoted by sort of this red ribbon that goes across them. And different weapons can allow you to hold more of those types of cards or less of those.
Right. So you're going to shuffle those cards up. You're going to draw 5 of them, and then you're going to take your turn. On your turn, you're allowed to do anything in any order that you so wish. Some of the options are moving. Again, moving, you can spend food to move anywhere up on the board. If you move into a new location and wish to explore it, that stops your movement.
Right.
If you do combat, that stops your movement, so you can't combat and then move again. You can also push yourself, as David alluded to. You can decrease your health by 1 for each movement that you take if you don't have the possibility of spending food. On your turn, you can encounter the location by simply taking off if there's any of these crystals there, and then doing whatever it says up on the card itself, like drawing cards, looking for a specific weapon within the market deck.
We covered a few of those earlier in a very general sense. Like Jeremy just said, a lot of those is just a way to interact with the marketplace in a different way. The one that's going to sort of fuel the game the most, though, I think, are the combat cards, whether they be an ambush or one that you're going to initiate the combat.
Right. So on your turn, you're allowed to play as many of your red combat cards as you so wish, such as the original hack that you have. And what you do is you'll splay it off to the side of your actual weapon itself. Each of these weapons, as David said, has a stacking limit on it. The trick in this is really cool, though. You're building up for an attack. So on your turn, if you place one of these, you're fine. If it comes back around to you and you don't place a second one nor use an attack, that will go back into your discard pile. So each turn you can keep compiling onto it, or at least have to play one card into your string in order to keep those cards there.
Yeah, thematically, it kind of feels like as you lay a card there, you're kind of like gearing up for a fight. And then if a fight doesn't come, or if you don't initiate a fight, relax, and all those cards go away. So you kind of have to really control the flow of your cards. Your hand management is very important, getting those cards out at the right time.
And then choosing when to attack at the right time as well. So if you do decide to attack, you go to a location that enables an attack, and you draw X number of minions, depending upon the location that you go to, and you'll have to fight these minions. When you fight these minions, you'll look at the cards, and they'll tell you the amount of strength that they have, and then any special abilities that they have at the bottom. What you're going to be doing then is that each of the weapons in the game allows you to draw an X amount of cards into combat.
Right.
And you're drawing those from your deck of cards from the top. Sometimes you draw food, which is bad.
Right.
Sometimes
Food's not going to help you in combat.
Sometimes you may draw attack cards, and sometimes you may draw any of these strive cards or any of the cards that are basically money. They also have a little symbol on the upper right-hand portion that shows an attack symbol. Those can be used for whatever the money value is.
Yeah.
So these are typically what you want to be able to draw. The trick in the combat is that you have to dish out the damage from your weapons to these
the minions via the cards. It's not just a total calculation of okay, I have 12 points of damage. There's 12 points of hit points. I'm done.
Yes.
You actually have to, if you have 10 of those points on one card.
Yes.
And there's a 3 and a 1.
Yeah.
One of those guys is going to take 10 points of damage and be overkilled, and then you might be left with not enough points to kill the other guy.
Yeah.
So it's all about how you apply the cards of damage on these minions, which makes it really interesting. It's a little tricky at first to get your head around that, but it's a lot more robust than just, okay, I got these points, apply these points, done.
Yeah. Now, if you aren't able to defeat all the enemies that you have drawn, you are allowed to push on. When you push on, a couple things happen. One, you have to expend a food.
Yeah.
If you don't have a food, you can't push on. The second thing that happens is you have to take an injury. So you have to take one of these pain cards and enact whatever it says, like gain a curse or lose some health and so forth.
Then you get to draw one more card.
Yeah.
So hopefully,
if it's a low-level enemy, you will probably draw what you need. If it's a high-level enemy, it's probably not a good idea to push on.
Exactly.
And then any enemies that you don't defeat will also damage you and inflict pain and so forth. The last thing that you do, no matter what you do on the turn, if you want to end your turn, you can go to the market. And that will signify the end of your turn. Again, you can buy equipment from any of the locations upon the board. However, depending upon the location that you go to, for instance, if I went to this location, you'll notice that there's a red banner at the bottom. The only thing I can buy is the red card and those 2 pieces of equipment. The blue and the green cards I cannot buy. I like that portion of the game too because it really pushes characters to go to very specific positions to buy.
Exactly.
What they need.
It gives, like you said, that motivation that players need to sort of explore the board.
Yep.
And then, like you said earlier, we didn't touch on this. The green cards are really interesting in that they also incentivize the players to explore the boards. Again, you and I in our game each had one of those cards where once there's a certain amount of spaces explored,
They become more powerful.
Those green cards become significantly more powerful.
Yes.
A great way for, basically the game to push players to approach it in a slightly different manner.
Yeah. The game will end in one of two possible ways: when the king is defeated, or when there is a number of death of players equal to the number of players. So if in a 4-player game, there's 4 total deaths, the game will end, and then players will calculate their victory points. Now, when a player battles Jack or any of the bosses, what will happen at that point, all the players will retreat back into a town, the level 2 encounters will come up, and they'll be splayed over, and people will go to the demon trader and be able to buy stuff.
Yeah, and it's interesting. Whoever beat the boss is the one who gets to decide how those cards are organized on the board with some rules and guidelines.
So that is Hand of Fate. If that interests you, go check it out on Kickstarter. If you have any questions about the game, make them in the comments below. David and I will answer those for you. Subscribe to us, please. Follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and everything else that we do here at Man vs. Meeple, and we will catch you guys next time.
Bye-bye.
Season 1 of Man vs. Meeple is sponsored by our friends at TMG Games. And at Cool Stuff Inc. Cool stuff in stock at coolstuffinc.com.